Hi, and welcome to the VLOOKUP tutorial in Excel. And just to quickly explain what a VLOOKUP does or a lookup function does, a lookup function retrieves values from a table of data that match a specified condition. So what you can see here in front of you is a lookup table. We call this a lookup table that has a lot of values. So as an example here, I do have a bunch of student names, student IDs, and marks. And at the very end, I do have a final mark. So let's say I want to be able to find the final mark for Barbosa. Okay. Now, as you can see, I have to scroll all the way down here, find Barbosa, and scroll to the right, find the last column to give me the final mark. Now, there's an easier way for me to do this, which is basically to use a vertical lookup. V stands for vertical. So the VLOOKUP will go down to find the specific name that you're trying to look up and then return the value that you want out of this whole table. So let's use this name here, Barbosa. The last name is Barbosa, and I want to get the final mark. So I can start typing in the formula by starting with an equal sign, equal VLOOKUP, and as you can see, it tries to match out of the list of formulas available in Excel. VLOOKUP, I can hit tab in here, and that will finish up the rest of the function name and put in opening parentheses. The first argument that it's looking for in bold here is the lookup value. What am I actually looking up? And basically, in this scenario, I'm looking up the last name, Barbosa. I can type it in, put it in quotation marks, or I can just reference this name here. Comma, that's the second argument, the table that I want to retrieve data from. Now, given that I am looking up the last name, the first column of my table should be the last name column. So I'm going to start from this column here as the beginning of my table array. And I should definitely include the whole table, or at least up to the column that I want to retrieve the data from. So in this case, I can look up the whole or select the whole table. So I'm going to use a shortcut here, which is Shift Control right arrow to choose the whole row, and then Shift Control down arrow to choose up to the last row, and this will give me the whole table array in here. And I'm just going to scroll all the way back for you to see. And then I'm going to hit comma again. Now the third argument it's expecting is which column do you want to retrieve the data from. In this case, I want the last one, which is the final mark. So the table array starts with column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I want to specify the column number 13 to get my data from. So 1, 3, comma, and this is an optional argument. If you want to have an exact match, you would put in false. In this case, I want the exact match of that last name. So I want to hit false. You can type it in, or you can just double click one here and then close parentheses and hit enter. So it's giving me back 5.8%. So if I scroll all the way down, go to Barbosa, and just hit Control right arrow to go to the end, as you can see, I've got 5.8%. So as you can see, Barbosa was a unique last name in this list, but in some cases there are multiple people with the same first name, same last names, etc. So for example here, if I want Adams, I've got Jordan Adams and Stephen Adams. So if I type in Adams, it's going to give me 69.9, and I'm pretty sure this one has selected Jordan Adams because it's going to return back the very first exact match that it will find in that list. In this case, the first Adams is this one here. So if I again scroll all the way to the right to see, that's 70%. Obviously, if I put some decimals, it is 69.9. Okay, now to make it, let's say I want actually Stephen Adams. So probably the last name is not the most appropriate field to look up. The best way to do it is to use a unique value. Student numbers will definitely be a unique value to look up. So let's say I want Stephen Adams in this case, so I'm going to copy the value of this student number, paste it in here, and now I need to change my function and formula to look up something different. Now I'm not looking up the last name, I need to look up the student ID. So I need to reference now the student number, which is this one here. And I remember that I have to change now my table array, because my table array starts with the first column is the last name. The lookup value, student number, has to be the very first column in the lookup table. So now I have to change it from B to C, so C9. And remember also that now my column index has changed. Instead of 13 columns, I have to reduce that by 1 because I shrunk my number of columns. So I'm going to return the 12th column, which is the final mark. And I definitely want to keep it as exact match as well. So I can hit enter. Now it's returning 77.8, which again, if I go to Adams, Stephen Adams in this case, and go all the way, and I'm getting 77.8, which is exactly what I got back. I can also use the VLOOKUP for approximate matches. It doesn't have to be always exact matches. And this is great when using it with numbers or ranges. As you can see here, I do have a letter grade assigned to a range of final marks. So anybody with 50 to 55% will get a D. And so the way you can use VLOOKUP is it will assign a letter grade based on this tabulation here for each of these final marks. So I'm going to look up the final mark to match it in here. Now, given these are numbers and ranges, it's going to find the highest number, the lowest number that is greater than this final mark and assign the letter grade. So, as an example, 77%, the lowest number that is greater than 77 is 80%. 77 will fall below the 80% here, so it's going to assign a B. So let's take a look at that. Equal sign, VLOOKUP. I am looking up this number here, comma, and I'm going to choose my table array or my lookup table, comma, and I want to return the second column. So this is column 1. The actual grades or letters, grade letters are in column 2. I'm going to choose that. And in this case, I'm going to choose true. Close parentheses. And as you can see, that assigned the letter B. Now, if I want to copy this formula to all of the rows below, I can do that, and it will assign a letter grade to each of those final marks. But remember that if I'm copying and pasting it to the rows below, I want to make sure that my references are going to be correct. These are still what we call as relative reference. We want to make them absolute reference. So in order for me to do that, I can put in the $sign before the letter and $sign before the number. And this way, as I copy paste all the way down, I can make sure that it's always referencing this table here. So once I'm done with this, I can go ahead, Control C, I'm going to copy, and then I'm just going to highlight some of them here to show you how this is going to work. Control V to paste, and as you can see now, I've assigned letter grades.
If you liked the video,
please share, like, and subscribe.